Hi, and welcome. It's Patrick Donahoe. I'm really excited about today's episode and couldn't be happier to have you here with us. Today, we have two incredible guests, Gary Pinkerton, one of our wealth strategists at Paradigm Life, and Aaron Chapman, a Paradigm Life client and longtime finance veteran. We often get asked the question, how can I get my children involved in family finance practices? Well, Gary and Aaron are true experts in this arena and have mastered family adoption of the Perpetual Wealth Strategy, which each member of their respective families actively participating in family finances. So they're going to share their own stories with you today, along with specific tips and advice for mastering your own family's adoption of this strategy. So let's get started. Welcome to the Perpetual Wealth Strategy podcast.
Patrick, thank you for inviting me to co-host this episode and the opportunity to talk a few minutes with a very, very close friend of mine and client, I'm proud to say, Mr. Aaron Chapman. Aaron, say hi.
Hey, folks. Hey, Gary. Thanks for letting me on. Patrick as well, introducing us and letting us be participants. This is a really cool opportunity, and I am very, very happy part of it. Thank you.
So Aaron is one of my most favorite people on the planet. That's probably because Aaron and I are so incredibly passionate about the same things and very much aligned in our thought process. Our topic today is one of those examples, life insurance for family members. And it's one of those protected wealth strategies that families just don't talk enough about. And yet it's so vital to the legacy that I think all of us want to pay forward. And that word legacy is kind of charged with all kinds of messed up meanings. So Aaron, you're writing an amazing book, not going to be part of this conversation really, but in that book, you allowed me to take a look at it. What is the main thing that people mess up when the word legacy is thrown around? Like, what are they thinking?
Well, when I looked up legacy, because I hear that a lot. I travel a lot. I'm in a lot of think tanks, a lot of business meetings, and people talk about this legacy. And when you look up the definition, the first thing that you find is monetary. And it's really frustrating that, when you think about the globe and all the people who have been on it and what was left behind when they exited this life, the majority of the people that are on this that left never left a legacy by definition then. And I think one of the other things, what you brought up, is people fail to even talk about legacy. I think the reason they don't even talk about it, they don't even get into the discussion about it, because they don't know where to start. And they are I believe, basically already taken apart by the fact that they don't believe they're going to leave anything for their family anyway. So why even get into the conversation? They've already been had their legs cut off just by the definition alone.
Yeah, and and that's awesome. And they've discounted what's really legacy. It's not the dollars, and we'll certainly get into that here in a moment. And so this is a strategy, incorporating life insurance, incorporating family education and things like that into their family and bringing in trusts and things. That's something that's commonly used in the wealthy in America, has been across the globe for generations, for centuries. And it's commonly used today in a family office environment. So you have those ultra wealthy that have always done it for generations. And then you have this concept of family office. And maybe some of the listeners aren't familiar really with what a family office is, but it's just a private wealth management system that either focuses, it's a team of trusted advisors that either work directly for one very large family, think the Rockefellers, or they work for several families, but they only work for people who have this higher net worth and can afford to bring in, counselors about all things financial in their life. So it's very common there. It's not common for the middle class, for the common man out there. It's just as important for them, but it's not used there. And it's my belief that it can be, and I absolutely know it's Aaron's belief that it can be. Any thoughts on that?
Agreed. I think that's been made too complicated to get the common man to believe that it's possible. Yeah. And the further I go into it, so I had the idea of how I want to implement these things. With all the travel that I do and all the people I've listened to and the things I thought, how am I going to pass this on to my children? How am I going to make them responsible for it? There's one thing this world is good at, is not taking responsibility for anything. So in that thought process, I started digging into it. I thought, okay, I'm writing this out. This is how this is going to go. And I'm laying out all the details of it. And then as I start talking to my attorney and talking to other people, you can't do that. You can't do it that way because the rules read a different way. So I'm having to change it and change it and change it. And I even have changes done up until the last 2 days because it's become so complicated and so cumbersome. You can't just hand somebody something and say, this is what you do with it anymore. There's other people involved that can make claim on that, even though they were nowhere around you. So it's interesting how we have built a system and a society that protecting what's yours is very complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. Good points again. So, given the economic trends that are out there, given the debt that we're passing forward to our children, given the fact that the education system has made it almost, as bad as talking about religion, right? And nowadays to talk about finance. I don't know why that is. There's a lot of conspiracy theories out there about why it is. Maybe they're all true. Bottom line is, though, is that if we don't personally get involved with our family unit, then our kids are not going to know anything about personal finance beyond how to, complete their checkbook and what credit cards to get, as the best ones. And it has been known throughout history. It's been studied and studied and studied by people like Napoleon Hill and beyond, that there are two major destroyers of multi-generational wealth throughout history. And those are taxes and our future generations, meaning that we create a future generation without financial IQ and don't pass that along. And that, again, is what Aaron and his family are so passionate about. And so the solution to that is just, it is legacy, but legacy means, as we said, more than the dollars. The dollars can both be a gift and grace and tools to do something great with, but they can also be a weapon if you put them in the hands of somebody who doesn't understand. And there's plenty of people in Hollywood that we can point to as examples of that. And so you got to pass that experience, your experiences, your sense of accountability, education. And so I don't want to steal all this with my thoughts. Aaron, I'd love for you to give a little bit about your background and talk about how you're applying this in your life.
So, one, the weapon thing you just said, I don't want to lose that thought. When you put that type of power and those resources into the wrong hands, what's interesting is the weapon actually gets used on the individual incorrectly. Instead of a weapon to the masses and against the masses, it's against themselves. They don't realize this, but the more they have that's uneducated, they're actually they're killing themselves with that. So it's really kind of interesting how you put that as a weapon. My background, I started out in a blue collar family. We had a cattle ranch in Utah when I was in high school. From there, I went to the oil fields in Wyoming, to running heavy equipment, to working in the mines, driving truck, and all these things. And I stumbled my way, and that's a whole other story that would take a lot of time. Completely broke. Found myself walking the parking lot looking for change just to get enough gas to get home one day, and stumbled into a guy who introduced me to my industry 22 years ago, I think it was, 1997. Well, since then, I've been involved with working with real estate investors pretty exclusively. Right now, ranked in the top 20, actually top 1% of my industry, the top 20 in the industry for transactions closed, and it's all focusing on real estate investment. And with that focus, I was able to start developing some thought process for my own family. And we started talking about the legacy and the education and all these things. I started discovering that my ability to educate myself about these concepts, about real estate investment, on the life insurance piece, on building wealth and trust and handing that off, became more, at least, attainable for me when I was doing it for the benefit of somebody else other than myself. So how we advise our children is much better than how we advise ourselves. You can think about all the decisions we've made in life, the very stupid ones. How would we advise our children in that same scenario? Probably differently.
Yeah.
Because we have talked ourselves into some dumb decisions. But if my kid came to me at the exact same scenario, I guarantee I would advise him differently. So now what I'm going about this as is, how would I advise my children to handle a large sum of wealth? So with that, I'm having to live by my own advice. And in doing that is how I started developing this thought process. And, thanks to you and on our relationship that started with you as a client, that created this foundation of wealth for us, utilizing the infinite banking strategy.
And And so so you have kind of the tools in place, and like me, you've always wanted to figure out, how do I make sure that my experiences, my knowledge, what I've learned actually gets passed to the kids. And for me, it's about, now here's the challenge, is that most people we work with are business owners. They're successful. Maybe they're W-2 employees. And they're just super successful at what they're doing. We're all type A people. We're working super hard, and we think we're working for our family. You have a great story about how, you went to mastermind after business meetings, over the last few years to get in front of people that you can introduce concepts to and partner with. And they're all, giving pictures of their family, which is sitting next to you in your house there, which is an awesome picture, but it's in your house where you're sitting because you're able to spend some time with your kids. But they always say, like, this is my why. But we forget that doing all that stuff comes at a cost. And that price is that we're not in the room with our families. And so you do some very special stuff in your house now with your kids. And there's a reason, and we got time to talk about this, I think, Aaron. There's a reason. There was one of those moments where you realized, I need to spend some time with my kids. And I had these conversations with them. Share that with the audience.
So as you alluded to, I find myself in all these think tanks, and everybody has an opportunity to do a presentation. And every single one of those presentations and those PowerPoints, they like to talk about, here's my why, and it's a picture of their family. And I wanted to, when I got to the point of creating my own PowerPoint, I had put the picture of my family, but I wouldn't say that was my why, because I couldn't honestly say that was the case. My why for being there, my why for getting up and going to the office every day was not for my family. It was to build my business, build my brand, become the most well-known person in my industry. That's what I was after. My family was my family. And so I could not duplicate what they were saying. And I started finding that I was leaving a legacy with my family. And the legacy that I was leaving was, where's Dad going now? Yeah. So I've made some adaptations. I'm no longer part of many of those things because I was out. Every third month, I'd be out for 3 weeks, bouncing all over the country, trying to interact with all these business leaders. And I started to find that, with that legacy being left of where's Dad, I needed to change it to, I wanted a legacy being left of, hey, Dad, where are we going now? And that means I'm trying to bring my kids with me. And in bringing my kids with me, they have to understand what this is all about. They have to understand what information I have. I can't just put them in a room like that and have them sit there and try and listen to all these people drone on about business, because it gets old really quickly if you don't have a stake in it. And they don't. Yeah. But what I can share with them is how we're going to go about their future. So what I started doing is introducing them to the thought processes of what their future might be by introducing them to what it looks like for me and my wife, Rizzo, to not be here anymore. I used a story where a man was on a flight. He and his wife were going on a business trip. He was feeling, some chest pain, shortness of breath, things like that, as he's on that first leg of the journey. At his layover, they left the airport and went to a hospital to get checked out. They gave him a clean bill of health, sent him along his way. On the next leg of his journey, on the next flight, the captain comes over the intercom, asks him to identify himself. He hits the flight attendant call button. They come and talk to him saying, we're about ready to land. We're going to hold the entire plane on, and we're going to escort you off. There is an ambulance waiting for you. So when he was escorted off, he got to the ambulance, was taken to the hospital. 2 surgeons waiting for him, explained he was misdiagnosed, had a pulmonary embolism, and they needed to operate. The next thing they asked, or at least suggested, was if there's anything else in life you need to consider, now is the time. So I told my children that same story. I asked them, what would you do if Mom and I were gone on a trip and we were faced with a situation we didn't come back? And my children all looked at me saying, we don't know. So it really just boiled down to they then realized they don't know what they don't know. So we started from the beginning. We opened up everything. Here's our assets. Here's our income. Here's our debts. Here's the things that we own, and start structuring it all out. The only thing that was kind of negative about that was, when I showed them income, they turned and looked at me almost in unison, like, well, then why do we live here, Dad? Well, I had to explain to them that I am not going to give them a different life than I had growing up.
You don't want to deprive them.
They needed to Exactly. I wanted them to learn what it is to get up every day and have to work for things. I think that they were surprised with the kind of income we make. Yeah. So we don't throw it around at all. And so what we then incorporated or developed a system where now the children all get together once a month. They have to meet certain criteria. One, they have to serve on what we call a board, family board. They have to look at all our investment opportunities. We discuss them together, and then we vote on them together. And if there's a single dissenting vote, we go back to the discussion about it. And if we can't get away from the dissenting vote, we don't do the investment. But I found with humans that if there is a dissent and things don't work out, that person now has I told you so. If it does work out, then the other 4 or 5 people have I told you so. We can't have it. I can't have dissent within the group. I can't have them at each other. Well, what's also interesting is in a failure scenario, on either side, the investment is successful and the one who voted against it is the one that ever gets to say, I told you so. They're going to defend their position. They're not going to learn what they didn't consider before. On the opposite side, if it fails and that person's like, hey, I told you guys you shouldn't have done that, but you did anyway, and you wasted our money, well, then the other ones have to defend their position as to why they thought it was a good investment. Nobody learns from it. I'm trying to take that away from it too. Well, now I'm having to make adaptations on how they're going to contribute, because there is a requirement that they must at least save 10% of their income and invest it. Now, they can invest with the trust. They can't put into our assets in our trust, because that commingling puts things at risk. So what there's going to be is we're going to have to reconcile their saving their own funds, creating their own method of growth, and then they can couple it with us, with my wife and I's trust as partners in investments. So we're working on that too. Ultimately, I want there to be responsibility on their part to save, forethought in what they're planning to do with their lives, and also know that there's a massive, massive pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, because when my wife and I pass, not only do we have what we saved and we did not, and what we invested, what we created, and the foundation of our business, but they also have the death benefit.
Yeah.
And if they continue to grow their 10% or more, and they can also do the same thing with their family, it can be multi-generational, then they have access to that. If they don't, then they're getting written out of the will. They're not going to have the monetary side. They'll get, the stuff I have, the cars and the other things like that, but they're not going to get the family business assets, if you will.
So if you just think about, what you've put in place there, and it's still a work in progress, but it's going to happen soon. What you've put in place compared to what the average family is struggling with. And, so you've got people who understand to save. You're having a conversation with your children and maybe even bringing them with you on trips about finances, about what you're doing in your life. And you're incorporating something that's protecting from the other major stealer of wealth we talked about, which is taxes, right? So you're using life insurance as that vehicle to store, maybe even where they store all their cash. But at the moment, like me, you've got policies on all family members and you're contributing dollars to it in some manner. And my kids contribute their dollars that they earn by working for me in my business. And we put that into their life insurance. So just as a little snippet, just as a little teaser, think about this in your own family. The 2018 tax law allows us to take $12,400 in 19, I think it is, and it goes up every year, to give to our children. That our children can earn, and they can earn that money without paying taxes on it, right? But I would have paid the highest tax rates right now to earn that money. But instead, I've taught my children about work ethic. I've taught them about, all things job. They've also earned money that's theirs, and we took it as tax-free money coming into our family and kept it tax-free in the life insurance. So that's one of the things about how I'm doing it. And same thing Aaron's doing in his family. So you're teaching how to save. You're teaching work ethic. You're teaching ideas about business, about having a job. There's some fantastic aspects of this. Now, how do you get this started in your own family? I mean, if you are far from this, a lot of the people who are listening right now, they're far from this. Like their kids, they're trying to figure out how to get the kids off of Xbox. I've been there. Or how to get them to do their homework, right? How do we get them to sit down in the living room? And this isn't the Brady Bunch after all, right? We don't just have this culture where we all show up at the couch on Sunday afternoons or when somebody yells. That would be pretty awesome. So there's steps to get there. And we have a fantastic program at Paradigm Life talking about this family meetings and family, creating this culture and this legacy in your family and, your core values and how to have those conversations. We have this this series, which is pretty awesome. And it's miniature step level kind of stuff. So talk about maybe just an investment. What would that look like with your family going through an investment?
So when we do is we, of course, we sit down and we discuss what I know about it. If it's real estate, you're going to get a pro forma. We're going to look at the market. We're going to try and understand things about that preliminarily. Then I start a Zoom call like what we're doing here, and I will have whoever's offering that opportunity join us on the Zoom call, and my family will have an opportunity. Each member of the family has an opportunity to ask questions and get directly from that person what the investment is about, so they can garner for themselves whether or not they feel confident in it. And I believe it's an absolute necessity. And you've been a subject of one of our Zoom calls before.
Yeah.
It's a necessity for my kids to see within the eyes of the individual who's offering this and determine for themselves what they believe about the person. It's not so much to me about the investment as it is about the individual. Very often people ask me, well, how's this working out? Or how's the investments over with this group? And how is it really with Gary and this Paradigm outfit? Like, well, I can't speak to what your experience will be monetarily because every person is different. But I can speak to the person. I know the man. And because of that individual, I know that you're in good hands. That person is not the type that has any guile. He's not out to take from you to benefit him. He's out to give to you that benefits all. And that's a big difference in business. So I'm hoping to also educate them on how to discern between people and who's a predator and who is not. Because we as humans, we're the apex predator, but we're prey to one. We are prey to each other. And if you have another predator, you got to understand if they are going to be preying upon you, and you have to get away from them. I'm trying to educate them on that as well. And that's kind of tough because then it means I'm going to have to bring a predator in at some point so they can see what it looks like, to see what it acts like. And they're not there yet. I'm not there to be able to bring that guy in, but I have a few of them out there I know of that they would be very, very interested to start taking. And the one thing I want people to understand is, one, my kids will understand how to ask questions, adult-style questions about business. The individual who I'm working with will understand how to answer questions from a child and be able to communicate on a level that they can communicate. And the other thing I want to convey is there is a special place in hell for anybody who lies to kids and tries to take from them, right? So those are the things that I believe is important that my kids get. The other is building relationships with people that they can rely on when I'm not here. One of the things I didn't bring up is I gave my children the 3 phone numbers. One is my attorney, Michael Sheridan. One is Mr. Gary Pinkerton, and one is a buddy of mine by the name of Corey Boatwright, who is a real estate entrepreneur. I give them those 3 numbers for them to take down that if something happens, and if we are not coming back, that those are the 3 people they call. They don't call granny, they don't call grandpa, they don't call their cousins, they don't call their friends. They call those 3 numbers first and set in motion the individuals that are going to gather around them, protect them from those predators who are going to come after them while they grieve and prepare to communicate with family.
That's awesome. I'll tell you, I've been with you when you've presented this concept to groups out there, and it's just it's amazing. I mean, it tugs at our heart because we all know that we've got some blind spots here in our family, and it makes me blush and pause when you talk about it every time I hear it. So it's an important topic, and I really appreciate you sharing that with me and joining me on this one. We're almost to the end. But I wanted to reflect that when I did that Zoom with you, it was a bit of an uncomfortable moment that evening. But I'm sharing this funny story because it shows the power of what you're doing. So it's late in the evening my time on the East Coast here, and Aaron's 10-year-old daughter texts me a question about the life insurance policies, And so the next morning I was reflecting on that, and I said, "Hey, Aaron, your daughter texted me this question. I thought it was really cute, but what I wanted to make sure was that Rizzo didn't, be going through the text and like, what is this, weirdo texting back to my daughter?" So it was kind of funny. So I thought I would just share a couple other ideas that I've used in my family. So my sons, Jake and Ryan, both have life insurance policies. They both work for me in my business. They have for a few years. They've also put their money from other, jobs that they're now getting. They use that money for the life insurance policies for investments and for college. So my oldest is now in college, and he's using it to help fund things for college. And an example of investment. So about 4 years ago, I was already heavily into real estate and very excited about it. My oldest son was too. He's kind of an entrepreneur at heart. And he said, "Dad, would you help me invest in stocks?" And I said, "Sure, Jake, I would love to, but I'm curious, why did you choose that as what you want to go after? And he says, well, I want to do real estate, but I can't afford real estate, right? I'm going to do what you do. And so I helped him figure out how to do that. And he bought a little coffee parcel in Panama. I've got all kinds of ulterior motives here, and he knows them, so I'm not like, hiding any of this. But what I want to do is I want to have this one-on-one trip with my son. And I want my children to start to see what life outside of this very, very privileged place that we live in America is. Even the poorest in America does not understand what's out there in the rest of the world. And he's also going to see the concepts of like long-term growth and delayed gratification. These trees are going to take 3 years before he starts getting cash flow from them. And, I just want him to be able to tell his friends and get interest in other kids. Man, I own something in Panama. Don't you own land in Panama, Jake? Like, what's the deal with that? So, that's a great example and opportunity. Having them buy their bicycle, their car, their Xbox, whatever it is, buy something and then go through the conversations about how, well, I borrowed against my life insurance policy to do that, my own personal bank, and now I got to pay it back. And there's this thing about opportunity cost that mom and dad keep talking about. I mean, there's all kinds of lessons there. There's ownership. I have a buddy who's had his son buy his first big boy bike when he was done with the training wheels. And the old bike used to get ran over and sit out in the rain and is always in the way in the garage. The new bike's not, because he's got to use his errand money and all of his chores to pay for the darn thing. So there's some nervous moments where they say, "Hey, Dad, what happened to the money Grandma gave me for Christmas?" I'm like, "It's in your bank. Can I have it?" No, we don't do it that way. So it's,
Well, and one of the things that we're doing, because I'm going to get with you about each one of my children have to pick up their own life insurance policy.
Yeah.
We have a policy on each member of the family, but that's owned by us, right? And that goes to the develop of the real estate for the trust. But they're going to have to get their own. And then, kind of like what Jake was doing, and he was putting aside the money he was wanting to get into real estate. The goal going forward that we have been considering lately is for them to to be able to borrow from their life insurance policy and be able to buy into the real estate alongside us.
Yeah.
As a partner, as having a small stake in it. And then they will always have that stake in that. So whatever that cash flow is, that percentage goes back to them. When it sells, they get their percentage. So that way, it's not a matter of they're funneling the money into us to grow this one side. It grows both sides and they're a partner in it.
Yeah.
So then, of course, their decision-making skills is enhanced because they're at risk, because there's in it too. So, we're working on incorporating some form of separating that out so they can start their own policies. They're separate of the policies I already have on them. They're not the beneficiary of the death benefit, of course. How can they be? Nor is their significant or their children going to be. It's going to be the trust. But they start there, and then they can couple with this in the partnerships. I think there's some great opportunity down the road where they can get into real estate earlier because they're participating with us, and they can get more excited about it and not be stifled by, man, I don't have the capital. Well, even if you have $500, you can put it in there, right? But you get a really, really small sliver of the ownership, but you still have a sliver of ownership.
Yeah, that's awesome. Aaron, we've gone long, as you and I always do, because there's so much passion here. Is there something that you think we didn't talk about in this amazing, very important family concept about multi-generational?
The thing I think that we haven't covered is just get started with something.
Yeah.
Find somebody to talk to about it, and start figuring out how do you talk to your kids. Mine was sharing that story. Then start educating yourself. That's it. I mean, the bottom line is educate yourself. Talk to good people that are trying to incorporate this in their own life. Be cautious of people who are looking to try and take from you so they can just build up their own wealth. Now we can share that whole. I don't have time to share analogies anymore, but just get started. You can't get anywhere if you lay in the exact same spot all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome, folks. One of my dearest friends, and there's a reason why the man has that hat on. There's a reason. There's stories behind everything you see in this picture, and they're awesome stories. And Aaron will give you an opportunity to figure it out. But let me just promo a little bit. Go to aaronbchapman.com, and you'll figure out a lot of those stories. There's some awesome books coming out from this guy on these topics, and many more important lessons learned. So, my friend, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you, brother.
Patrick, over to you.
Thank you, Gary and Aaron. You guys are amazing. It was such a great episode, and thanks to you all for joining us. So be sure to visit the Perpetual Wealth Strategy podcast page on paradigmlife.net for all of this episode's content, as well as the additional assets we have for you that you can use to start talking with your family about this strategy. So join us next time as we talk about how to prepare for another critical point of communication as you move forward with the Perpetual Wealth Strategy. John Stewart, a deeply experienced entrepreneur and one of our wealth strategists, will be joining us to share his experiences and insights on how you can best discuss the Perpetual Wealth Strategy with your CFO, your CPA, or other financial professionals in your life. Whether you're a business owner yourself, have a small personal finance team, or a large team of specialized advisors, this will be an episode you don't want to miss. Thank you for listening to the Perpetual Wealth Strategy podcast. Be sure to visit the show's official page at paradigmlife.net for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Guest opinions are their own. If you require specific investing, financial, legal, tax, or any other specialized advice, please consult an appropriate professional or a wealth strategist at Paradigm Life. We welcome and appreciate reviews of the show. Head on over to iTunes or Stitcher to leave your review today. And don't forget to subscribe to the show to get access to every new episode and its exclusive content. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.